I don't think there is any concept as divisive as that of forgiveness after infidelity. And it's no wonder that it provokes such a strong emotional reaction in those of us that have been cheated on. After all, our partners were the ones that made these choices. They are the ones that acted selfishly, without regard for us, and often followed that up with lies and manipulations that continue to harm us. They are the ones that often refuse to apologize, and even more, refuse to accept responsibility. And yet we are the ones that are tasked with the burden of forgiveness. We are the ones that are told that we need to forgive in order to move on. And yet that forgiveness, it feels impossible. It feels foolish. It feels wrong. Forgiveness is one of those things that is deeply, deeply personal. I can't tell you how you should feel or what you should do. That's up to you. But what I can do is I can share my own progress with forgiveness, my own experiences, and I can share some thoughts that I've had over the years as I've dealt with my own ex-husband's infidelity. Like many of you, I'm sure, in the beginning, forgiveness felt absolutely impossible. In fact, I held on to my indignation, my pain, my rage. It felt like the only thing that I had. He had taken everything else, and I was going to be damned if he could take that from me. And it was so justified. And so I felt comfort in that justified anger. And I used to say, there's no way I can forgive him. The magnitude of what he did is simply too great. And then in time, I started to believe, well, maybe I could forgive him. But in order to forgive him, I would need an apology. I would need an admission of guilt. I would need the acceptance of responsibility. So I proposed forgiveness, but with constraints. And constraints that I didn't have control over. And if you know my story, you know that no apology, no responsibility, no admission ever came. I got the cheating, I got the blame, and then I got radio silence. And yet I was the one that was supposed to forgive. For years, I couldn't look past what he had done. For years, I held on to that anger. So much of what was keeping me tied to that, I believe, was the financial repercussions that I was still dealing with. I don't know if I would have been able to forgive him while I still had to pay his bills every month. But then in time, I started to have a shift. I started to realize that by not forgiving him, it wasn't impacting him, but it was impacting me. I was so sure that I was in the right, that I had the right to be angry, that I had the right to hold on to all that pain and all of that grief and all of that indignation. And I did have that right. But that right was only hurting me. And that's when I first started to open to the thought of, well, maybe, just maybe, I can find a way to forgive him. So I started to think about what forgiveness meant. At first I confused forgiveness with a pardon. It seemed like if I forgave him, that I was also saying that I approved of what he had done, and nothing could be further from the truth. But then I started to realize that I could forgive him for what he had done, while at the same time believe that what he had done was wrong. That those two things were not mutually exclusive. I realized that I could forgive him and still very, very much not want him in my life. I realized that forgiveness was more seeing him as human, seeing him as fallible, seeing the things he had done as coming from a place of his own pain. Again, not in a way of excusing it, but in a way of understanding it just a little bit and finding some acceptance. Because here's the truth of it. No apology, no taking of responsibility, and no forgiveness is ever going to change the past. You cannot alter what happened to you. You also cannot change how the person that cheated on you acts, how they respond, what they do. The only piece that you do have dominion over is how you respond to it. And choosing to soften, choosing to find that place in your heart, in your soul, to extend that forgiveness. It can be the best gift you can give yourself. Sometimes we perceive forgiveness as further victimizing us. I see it as something else. I see forgiveness as a way that you can empower yourself. It's something that you can control. In fact, forgiveness is what you do when you're tired of whatever happened controlling you. Forgiveness is your way of saying, I'm done with this. I want peace. I think so often we misunderstand forgiveness. So I'm going to offer you 3 truths about forgiveness that I'd like for you to consider. Truth number 1, forgiveness is your choice. The absolute worst is when the person that wronged you demands that you forgive them. That never works. Following behind that is when others, very often well-meaning, say that you have to forgive, that it's the only way to move forward. I sometimes fall into this trap myself because I know how valuable forgiveness has been for me. But just because that's been my journey, that doesn't mean that that has to be yours. You have to figure your own path. Maybe forgiveness is part of that. Maybe it's not. Maybe forgiveness for you just feels wrong. It feels like one other violation on top of everything else that was done to you. And you simply cannot stomach the thought. And you know what? That's okay. This is your choice. It's entirely up to you. Truth number 2, forgiveness, if it happens, is completely on your timeline. It cannot be forced. Even if it's something that you want to achieve, if you try to do it before you're ready, it won't work. There's no magic date. There's no time when you have to have it done by. It also doesn't tend to be a single event. It's a process. It's a slow softening towards the person that hurt you. It's a slow letting go of the anger, of the rage, of the hurt. You have to be patient with it. Very patient. And then finally, the third truth about forgiveness. You can add to it whatever conditions you want. You can forgive somebody and still refuse to have them in your life. You can forgive somebody and still ensure that they face the consequences of their actions. You can forgive somebody and never tell them. You can forgive somebody and reach out to them and have that conversation. It doesn't matter. It's completely up to you. It's your forgiveness. You get to decide if you do it, when you do it, and what it looks like.